All right. I think we've given some time. We've got a good number of folks here. Once again, thank you everybody for being here. Um, Pretty exciting to have a good group for our early session today. We're doing two webinars, same content now and in about 6 hours. So thanks to everybody that's here. I see a lot of familiar faces looking through the attendee list and also a number that I'm not so familiar with. So pretty exciting to see some folks who've been running RaceSense for years and also some relatively new faces. So that is super exciting. Let's go ahead and get into things so that we can cover as much as we can in this 1 hour time span that we have. An hour sounds like a lot, but when we get talking about RaceSense, it's very quickly to get caught up and run out of time. So we'll go ahead and get going. First, a brief introduction of myself. Again, I think I know a decent number of you, but my name is Doug Wake. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, here in the center of the US. And I'm the RaceSense director at Vakaros, which I think I'm the only person in the world with that title, which is super cool. What that means is that I spend my days training new operators, supporting our existing operators, making sure that the thousands of RaceSense events we're running a year go off without a hitch. So it's a really super cool role. We've done a lot since RaceSense has debuted in January 2023, and doing more and more webinars like this for our race committee folks, as well as our competitors and our sailors, is really important in building the institutional knowledge around sailing, around using RaceSense. So great to meet all of you if I haven't met you yet. And if I have met you, it's great to see you again. Just a couple quick housekeeping items. I have four main tips that I want to share throughout the course of this webinar, and then we will have time for some questions. If you have questions that come to mind during the webinar, what I want you all to go ahead and use is the Q&A feature, which is available in your Zoom menu. You'll see that you're able to submit questions. I've got a couple great members from our team who will be able to provide written answers, or in some cases, we'll save those questions and give an oral answer or maybe mention it while we're talking about a certain point. So don't hesitate to send those in. I may not necessarily answer them immediately. We may be waiting to tie it in with something later, so just be aware of that. And then just so everyone's aware, not that you actually have the ability to hop on and unmute yourself, um, this webinar is going to be recorded. We're going to post it either this session or next session, whichever we think is better. We're going to post on YouTube afterwards. And so that will be accessible for yourselves to reference back to, or to anyone else who may want to learn more about RaceSense. So anyways, with that in mind, we've got a great group here, and let's go ahead and get into some tips for how to run better RaceSense events as a race committee. One thing that I do want to note, sort of with the focus of this webinar, is that, we're not really getting into the nitty-gritty of, what do I do in this one obscure situation, that I might have run into in a club race in 2024. We're sort of trying to keep this general and applicable to all the clubs that are running RaceSense. So there will be absolutely something for everyone in this call to learn. We'll have time for some questions at the end, but again, my hope is that we can keep the questions RaceSense related rather than necessarily here's this, edge case that my club might be running into. We're happy to answer everything, but just so you all are aware, that's sort of our goal here. So my number one tip for running RaceSense, and this is one that I think has often been lost on people. One of the cool parts about RaceSense is that you can run it offline. But as we've continued to develop RaceSense, we've added tons of really cool new features that really add a lot to our solution. And at the root of a lot of those is some form of external connectivity. So my first major tip is stay connected. Now, what does that actually mean and what does it do for me? Having a reliable external connection, we'll talk about that in just a little bit, really does a lot for RaceSense. And one of the things that it does that you all will notice on the water is it will help to increase accuracy. So RaceSense, as of over a year ago, uses something called differential GNSS, which allows us to have increased accuracy for the positions of the start marks, of the boats, all of that. That relies on corrections info coming in through your race control tablet that can then be distributed to the fleet. So if you're not online, you're not getting that corrections information and you're not enhancing the accuracy of your RaceSense network quite as much as you would be able to. So as someone who sails a lot with RaceSense and runs a lot of RaceSense, that's a huge, huge, huge priority for me. So absolutely one great reason to stay connected there. Another reason is for live tracking and replay. I know that a lot of clubs have taken great advantage of RaceSense's live tracking and replay capabilities. A lot also haven't. So everybody here should know that when you are running RaceSense, there is a tracking link that comes with each event. There's no additional cost to using that or accessing it or sharing it. Um, but in order to have that tracking data upload so that it can be available to sailors, to viewers and fans, whatever it may be, you have to make sure that you are running with connectivity on the water. So again, another super important reason to stay connected. Um, Taking that one step further with live tracking and replay, if you ever want to go back and use the live tracker, for example, as evidence or context in a protest hearing, or even if you're just trying to sort something out at the bar, you're going to need to have some form of connectivity on the water to upload that data. And then the third major reason that we really think connectivity is a high priority item is just for troubleshooting. Many of you who have run RaceSense, and again, I'm looking at the names and I recognize quite a few of them, have access to a RaceSense support WhatsApp group. If your organization is running RaceSense frequently and you don't have access to one of these, feel free to send us an email. We can get you set up with one. We always do our best to be super responsive, and whenever there's an issue with an event running RaceSense, we will look into that. By being connected, we are able to do a lot more in terms of diagnosing what might be going on with your RaceSense network, either in real time or in retrospect. When you're running offline, we really don't have any sort of diagnostic information that's flowing our way other than what you're trying to remember. And obviously, it's really, really hard to remember on the signal boat. Oh, what order did I press these buttons? And was this indicator blue or red? There's a lot going on. So I really encourage everyone, uh, if the previous reasons weren't enough, absolutely work hard to stay connected so that if you ever run into any kinks, we can help troubleshoot those, and we can have as much information to work with as possible so that we can help either resolve your issue on the water, get you set up for the next day, make changes on our side, and potentially release bug fixes or new versions of the firmware or the app when we run into anything out there. So important notes there. There really is a lot that connectivity can do for RaceSense, and having reliable connectivity, emphasis on the word reliable, really does a lot. And I often get asked in that vein, well, how do I make sure that I'm connected? And that's a really good question, right? There's all sorts of connections going on with RaceSense, and a lot of time folks will get confused. Oh, I'm connected to the RaceSense network, so what does that connect me to? Well, not necessarily anything, right? So you want to have your race committee tablet, wherever you're running race control, connected to something external. That can be self-service via a SIM card for the race committee tablet. We're seeing a lot of race committees transition to having a Starlink on the race committee boat that their tablet will then be linked to. That is a hugely, hugely powerful tool. I think as someone that goes around and does this at a lot of different venues, and you see a lot of places with really bad cell service on the water, a Starlink is a really reliable and positive option. If this is something that your club is on the fence about or would think about, having a Starlink on your race committee boat is a really, really powerful way to ensure that you have a good connection. And then the third way to achieve some external connectivity is to use a mobile hotspot. These are a little less reliable, especially on providers such as Google Fi. But regardless, there are a number of options that you can use to get this external connectivity, and we really encourage you to explore any of those. Once again, if your club is looking at, hey, what's the best solution for me? We are always happy to take a look at that, try and provide a little bit of insight. But certainly one of these three I would want, and that's really unlocking, like we mentioned in the previous slide, increased accuracy, the live tracking and replay, and then also a lot of help on the troubleshooting end if we ever run into any sorts of issues. So do your best to stay connected when you're on the water. We understand it's not always completely achievable, but the more that you can plan ahead and that you can ensure before, especially a major event, that your signal boat has reliable connectivity, that's really going to help contribute to a positive RaceSense experience. The other form of connectivity that we also get asked about frequently is, for the sake of live tracking, having connectivity around the whole course. And I think a lot of you have probably sailed on a course or run races on a course where you've got a beat that might be a mile long. And in that case, the coordinator's direct range is not going to reach to the weather mark. So what boats will do is they'll sail what we call out of range. What this looks like on the live viewer and the replay viewer is boats will sail up. You'll watch them sailing up the beat, and then all of a sudden, say 1.5 kilometers away from the race committee boat, they'll stop and they'll park themselves. After they go around the windward mark and come back down, they'll sail back into range, and you'll see them once again. But uh, this is a solution that's actually been available for a little bit, and we're really working to help more and more clubs implement this. There is something that we call repeaters that will allow you to extend your connectivity across a course to really improve the live viewer experience. So, for many of you who I'm assuming are not familiar or may not know how repeaters work, here's a little TLDR version of that. Um, we're all familiar with the fact that our coordinator device only has limited range. And you've probably noticed that when you're out on race committee. At some point you see all these blue icons in the race control app. All the boats are in the starting area. They're nice and close. But again, if we're running an Etchells race, they're going to sail 2.5 nautical miles away and they're going to sail themselves out of range. And all those indicators are going to go red, and we're not going to be hearing any data from these boats, which means A, race committee's not hearing it, and B, no one downstream is hearing it. The fans at home that want to watch the race tracking, um, all that sort of stuff. And so what we developed is this concept of a repeater, which is effectively a roving node that can go around the race course. And you can have multiple of these that adds another circle of connectivity. So what you need to run a repeater is an additional atlas. That can be an atlas that's already getting mounted on a windward mark or being sent with a windward mark boat. It can be on a media boat. And then you need an Android device of some sort that has a cell connection or a Starlink connection, whatever it may be. Um, and I'm not going to get into the process of actually setting up a repeater here because it gets a little ticky-tacky and you've got to use the race control app. But the easy to understand version with the repeater is if you have additional atlases and these additional either tablets or phones that can connect to them, um, those can then roam around the course and act sort of like a second coordinator or a third coordinator, fourth coordinator, whatever it may be. And they can upload data that they're hearing from nearby throughout the course. So what you can sort of see in this diagram over here is we have our pin and our RC, and our RC device is the coordinator here. We've got this nice blue circle around it that shows where the coordinator's connectivity is. This green little media boat, we've named it here, uh, is a repeater that's then further up the course and might even be able to sort of drive around with the fleet. And you can see this green circle, part of it overlaps the blue circle where you've already had connectivity. But outside of that, you're adding this increased range of connectivity where you're then able to hear these boats' locations, their orientations, all that for the live viewer. And it can get uploaded, uh, synchronized, and then is available on our viewer. So when folks are watching at home, they can then see the whole course. So, for example, we've been running a ton of 49er racing these days. That's one of the Olympic classes that has come on board with RaceSense. And oftentimes, what they'll be doing in that class is the jury boats, which have a little flagpole. We'll put a repeater device at the top of their flagpole along with a little phone that's running the race control app and is all synced up. And as the jury follows the fleet around the course, not only are they doing their job as the jury, but they are also providing increased connectivity so that when folks are viewing the races at home, or maybe a broadcast is using RaceSense data, um, they're able to see with greater resolution or just be able to see in the first place what's happening at different parts of the course. With that all in mind, one of the additional things that I think a lot of race committee members might miss is that you have the option when you're running an event to share the live tracker link from that event. And so I wanted to put a couple slides here on how you actually do that. I imagine everyone here, or pretty much everyone here, recognizes this race control app page. This is the event menu. We can see we've got a single division input. And so if we want to go ahead and actually share the tracker link for an event, you can see this, trace this orange arrow here up to this little share button. If we hit that, it'll pop up what we see on the right, where there's either a QR code where someone with a phone can scan and access the tracker link, or you can hit this little share button down here at the bottom, and that'll then allow you to email the tracker link wherever you'd like to. So, a really good practice is to get this up on the notice board for any event that you're running. We find that sailors just absolutely love to go back and watch their racing after sailing. So, go ahead, do that, hit that share button, send it off to whoever's managing your club spot or yacht scoring or manage to sail, whatever it may be, and get that tracking link out there so that all the viewers at home can go ahead and actually watch the racing that's happening, or the sailors, once they're done with their day, can hop back in and they can replay that racing. So I definitely encourage everyone here, be aware of where you can find your live URL. Every event, it's great practice to share it and get it out there. It's great marketing for your club or your event. So by all means, don't forget that this is an option. You're not paying anything extra for it. If you're using RaceSense, you should absolutely be sharing the tracking links. Ooh, a lot of talking. Need some water. Um, my next big tip is about mounting race committee devices properly. And this is a really, really, really important aspect of running RaceSense. I think I say it again later, but how race committee devices are mounted is probably the single biggest determinant of race committee device and just general network performance. Um, you can absolutely screw up an event by mounting a race committee device improperly. And at the level that we're working with accuracy, getting down to 20, 15, 10 centimeters and getting down even towards 1 centimeter with the Atlas Halo RTK. How you mount these devices matters. And you know, if you mount a device that's maybe not quite optimal, uh, it may still be very accurate, right? 30 centimeters versus 15, whatever it may be. But we're fighting so hard for those last couple centimeters to be as perfect as we can. The mounting becomes super important. So just a general guide, I think, this is neither of these lists are complete, but I think it's important for race committee folks to sort of understand, what we say to avoid and what we say to embrace when you're mounting race committee devices. So let's look at the avoid section first. And, I've been all over the world and run a heck of a lot of races, and, you always see a bunch of different mounting strategies and different types of signal boats and whatnot. And first thing I want to emphasize is we understand that sometimes things are unavoidable, but the more prep work that we do before we run an event to make sure that these factors are not in place to negatively impact an event, the better. So one of the things that we do is before we're going to events, we're making sure we know what type of marks they're using, what type of signal boats is being used, excuse me, what the orange flag staff is made out of. We're really vetting all this to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. So things that I want to avoid generally. Carbon fiber right up smack dab next to the device, not good. That's going to impact radio and positioning performance. Metal in general can be pretty bad. Again, we want to have some space in there. I'll talk a little bit later about getting spaced out from metal or carbon poles, but metal is generally not awesome. Um, Metal boats as well can be a challenge. We've run a number of events with signal boats that are, fully steel hulled boats. And as you might imagine, you can end up with what's called multipath error, where that steel is actually reflecting the GPS signals that are coming in. Again, we have improved how our devices work to mitigate any of this, but we're fighting for those last couple centimeters. So if you can help it, stay away from metal signal boats, stick towards fiberglass signal boats. T-tops. A lot of times we see race committees who will have, the T-top on their boat, and then they'll be mounting their race committee device, showing up in the outline, underneath the T-top. So you're destroying the sky view for that device. On a similar vein, human interference. A lot of times we'll see, we're at the right end of the starting line at the boat end, and the race officer will have their boat end device mounted and then stand and hold the pole, basically standing over the device. Again, that really does a lot to impair that device's ability to calculate its positioning. as people, we're just a big giant blob of water, and GPS signals are very weak. They do not travel well through water. So that will really negatively impact positioning if you've got someone standing over your boat end device. Stacking devices is another one that we see. You know, if you have two atlases and you're going one on top of another, uh, that's a great way to impair the performance of the bottom one. And then another one that we really see a ton that we really, really, really try to avoid is having the devices laying face up. So I'm going to grab an atlas here that I can show. If you have a device, there's an atlas, everybody recognizes this. If you have a device and it's sitting on a mark or on a staff, whatever it may be, if its face is up towards the sky, it is not going to be able to position itself as accurately as if it's upright. So we really, really, really want to focus on having our devices upright as much as possible. Uh, the antenna that you're actually using in your device is up here for the GPS. You can imagine if it's upright, it's got a great sky view. There's not a lot in its way. Even if it's face up, there is a heck of a lot on the sides here of the guts of the device that's going to be impairing its view. Same thing if we go upside down, you can imagine that's even worse. So sometimes we see folks strap devices on marks and they'll just let them hang upside down. That's a big no-no in our world. So a lot of times we like to see, I have an example here from our partners at Mad Mounts. This is actually a mark mount that holds the device upright on top of a cylindrical mark, and it attaches with a little trailer pin here. So we really want to make sure that the devices are upright. With that in mind, and I've already sort of mentioned some of these as the anti-example, if we want to embrace PVC poles are really great. Plastic is awesome, right? So fiberglass and PVC are really awesome. They do not have an RF impact. They're not going to impact your positioning on your devices. The network communications are going to be great. So if it was if it was my world and everyone was living in it, you know, all race committees would be using either PVC or glass poles to support their devices. We really want to use plastic brackets. I know that there was a big fad before RaceSense was a thing, especially among sailors. Oh, you know, I got a cool new carbon fiber bracket. And you guys as race managers should be aware of this. Having a carbon fiber bracket, especially one that like wraps around the device, is going to hurt your device's positioning performance, whether you're using RaceSense or whether you're not. So we really encourage, I've got some examples here again from our partners at Mad Mounts, plastic brackets that aren't going to have an RF impact. If you need to use for some reason, either a metal pole or a carbon fiber pole for either your coordinator or your boat end staff, whatever it may be, make sure that you have a plastic bracket that can offset the device as much as possible from that pole. We obviously want to have a clear sky view. That's sort of the antithesis of having this human interference or having T-tops. The more that the device can see around itself, you know, sort of 360 degrees and then up as well, the better it's going to be able to position itself. It's got more access to more GPS satellites. A really cool option that I'm going to talk more about is starting between marks. Um, Sailing is headed this direction. I think, you know, the vast majority of major regattas are going to be started between two marks within 2 or 3 years. So be aware that that is an option. We see tons of clubs doing this for their weeknight racing and then all the way up to national championship racing. I just sailed earlier this summer in the Melgus 15 National Championship with maybe 75 boats. We started between two marks, finished between two marks. It was awesome. It was amazing not having a signal boat screwing around on the start line. So we'll get more to that later. And then, like I mentioned, having atlases upright is really, really important. So focus on that, especially when you're mounting on marks. If you can keep your devices upright, that's great. Here's an example here of some pretty ideal mounting. You can't actually see the atlas in this. It's in a small plastic case and this little yellow guy attached to this MarkSet bot. So you can see that's on a fiberglass mast that's in the middle of the bot. It's got clear sky view. There's nothing around it. It's got a plastic mount. So if you're looking to get exceptional positioning performance, this is a really, really good example of how to best mount. And we often say, it's funny, you know, the best marks to mount an atlas on or to use an atlas for a race committee purpose is a mark set bot. You can do this masked in the middle. It's really a great option. Here are a couple more examples of plastic brackets that either go on race committee poles or that go on marks. The right two, again, are for mad mounts. The furthest right one is the one I just held up with the trailer pin that stays vertical on marks. The middle mount has a slug, so you could actually, if you needed to, you could run it up the mast track of a signal boat. Excuse me. And then on the left, you can also see another option that was made, an anti-snagging mount to go on top of buoys as well. So all of these are sort of made in service of making sure that these devices are being kept upright on marks. If you have a weird type of mark or you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to us, put something in the Q&A, send us an email, reach out in your WhatsApp group, whatever it may be. It pains me every time I see a RaceSense event running and you've got a device sitting on the pin end face up and you just know it's not performing as well as it should be. So absolutely consider all of that. I think that's all pretty important. I said this earlier. I want to say it again as we sort of wrap this section up. Race committee mounting absolutely has the greatest impact on RaceSense performance of anything we do. It's more important than mounting on the sailboats themselves. It's more important than connectivity. You can really see some odd results if you're not mounting your race committee devices properly. So absolutely pay attention to this. It's worth spending the time ahead of time. We work hard at this. And please ask if you have questions, I think is my biggest point. Another point that I sort of mentioned earlier, and this is a picture from the Melgus 24 North American Championships this year in Miami, where the fleet started between two marks. Starting between marks is, without question, the future of sailing. I don't think there's anyone saying that that's not the way to go, and it's, in our opinion, it's the best way to improve your RaceSense start performance. So here's a little diagram of what that generally looks like. I was actually just last weekend running a regatta where we started between two marks. It was super smooth. We had, I think, 40 e-scows, which are about 10 meters long. So great boats. This is how things tend to look. You'll have your pin, which is assigned as your start left in the race control app, and then you'll have your boat, which would be your start right. And then you'll have a signal boat that's floating with the coordinator up on a tall pole like normal to make sure you've got good connectivity there. And so that signal boat can either line itself right up with the line. Honestly, I think it's preferable to be a little bit above. You can get a better angle of what the fleet's actually doing, and you're not sighting the line anyways. But having that floating signal boat is really powerful for a bunch of reasons. First of all, there's no race committee impact on the GPS performance. A lot of times you'll have a signal boat that can have a negative impact on the positioning of the devices that are mounted on it. That's not awesome. So we just get that boat out of the way. You have hugely increased flexibility. Your signal boat can move wherever you need to, and the line, especially if you're using robotic marks, can be moved constantly, all the way up to 4 minutes. And we see that for the fleets that run this way, they are absolutely able to square their line up later and later in the sequence. And because with RaceSense, the sailors get their distance to line information live to their devices, there's no need to stop and let anyone reping. You're just able to make these changes so that you can have a really, really square line as close to the start as possible. I'm sure that some of you have owned a boat that's been used for race committee, and you probably don't love putting it in harm's way with a bunch of competitors coming up with the chance of bumping it. I know as a competitor, I don't love having a race committee boat there because it's a big giant wind shadow, and you could absolutely bump into it. So worth considering that there, especially if you're using robotic marks. A lot of times what we'll see is those start marks will slide in and become the gate and then the finish line if you're finishing downwind, so you can use only a limited set of marks. And then, like I mentioned earlier, all of a sudden the race committee boat becomes a lot more flexible. Now, at bigger events, you might have a surplus of volunteers and boats, and you can afford to have a race committee boat anchored. As you get, especially to smaller events and club racing, and we see a lot of club racing with RaceSense these days, probably at least half of the RaceSense that's running is, Tuesday night races, wherever they may be. all of a sudden, whoever is starting the races is so much more flexible. And so they can do things like moving around the course to adjust marks. At my local club, we have one race committee boat, and it's an amazing couple guys that come out. They run racing 4 or 5 days a week, but it's just them. And so once a course gets set and they get anchored, they're stuck. They can't really go anywhere. So if there's a 30-degree shift for race 2 of the night, that windward mark is just going to be 30 degrees off. If you're not anchored, you're able to just run up, grab that mark, and reset things super easily. You can also do media. You can do more promotion of the racing that's happening. You can do safety. Once again, so many of these clubs are running with a single race committee boat. Okay, what happens when someone's actually in distress and there's no dedicated safety boat out there? You have to give away the whole race. If you have this free signal boat, you can be there quickly to help. And you can also have RaceSense running automated starting and finishing through that line that you've already anchored. So lots to gain there. I think absolutely having your race committee boat being more flexible is a huge, 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 huge win when you're out on the water. All right, we're on to our last tip here. Again, I wanted to leave a decent amount of time for questions. I'm surprised I haven't seen any roll in. One thing that really is important to focus on is making sure that your time is aligned properly. And this is a problem that has existed in sailing since the beginning of time. How do we make sure that we actually wait 5 minutes from when the class flag goes up to when the start goes off? And make sure that we're doing each of those at the exact same time that a person is looking down a line trying to make a judgment. I've probably had this conversation with most of you. It is so, so, so challenging to sync your hearing and your vision and try and look down a line and make that sort of determination. It is more achievable to sync sound signals and visual signals, but it is still really, really difficult. So what we have seen is that a lot of events, a huge amount of events, have just gone away from either horns or flags or both altogether. Especially the X-ray flag. That's a tip in and of itself. If you're still using the X-ray flag with RaceSense, you should put that thing away and never get it back out again. It is super confusing to sailors when that X-ray flag goes up because a lot of the times they'll have already gone back and cleared. The flag may still be up. Obviously, they know that they're clear, but it's just confusing in general. And your obligation as the race committee to get that flag down quickly can often be a bit of a challenge. For horns and flags, if you do choose to use them, say for the 5410 in the standard Rule 29 start, be aware of the following things. One, on horns, there's often a delay between when a horn button is pushed and the horn actually fires. I was recently over at the foiling week in Italy, and we had handed an atlas with a timer to the guy doing the horns, and horns are this guy's job. That's what he does, week in, week out. All of a sudden, we ended up running a start in a super high performance class where he had pushed the button and there was enough delay in the system that the horn was firing about a half a second to a second after RaceSense time. That's super confusing, not only for the sailors, but also for the race committee, because we're all so ingrained to be trusting the sound signal as when go is. But that's really not useful. And when it's not coordinated, you're absolutely not going to be able to take care of that. Flags need to be aligned in the same way. It's really, really hard to be absolutely perfectly synced. And for a sailor to perceive when a flag starts to move regardless is really, really challenging. And I can promise nobody's looking at the flags at the start. We think, again, down the line, it's likely that the way that start flags are done will change a little bit. But for the time being, really dialing in that sort of consistency is really important. And then this last one I also think is important. A lot of times there's this idea, oh, we really want to compare RaceSense against video. And that's super valid, right? You want to video the start, you want to see how well things are going. Getting an actual time alignment to 0 is really, really challenging. So one feature that we've added that some of you may have noticed is on the race committee atlases, you'll get a bright white LED pulse every 10 seconds, every whole 10 seconds, 0, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, up through the whole top of the minute, and it'll roll over. If you're ever videoing a start and you want to get proper time alignment, it is really, really, really important that you keep a race committee atlas with that time pulse happening in it. The reason for that is on any screen, this can be on an iPhone, on a watch, it does not matter. Uh, Rendering a screen extremely accurately at the level of accuracy that we expect um, on a time alignment is really, really difficult. So if you're ever videoing, that LED pulse is about the best indicator that we can give you of exactly when go is. So you can, sort to that frame on your phone and you can keep track of that. So if you are videoing, just know that that exists. Again, if we're looking at timekeeping on race committee, bad practices include starting your own watch relative to an atlas and then using your own watch. That's a great way to get a quarter or a half second off. Same thing with, little timers that we're seeing. Using different timing apps is just not positive. At the end of the day, and I'm sure everybody here understands this, we all need to agree on a ground truth for time. And RaceSense is that ground truth for time, right? Those OCS determinations are being made at what RaceSense says is go. So as you introduce additional sources of time, whether that's an iStart counting down itself, or a wristwatch, or a phone, whatever it may be, we introduce more errors. So I want to encourage everybody, think hard, hard, hard about how you're actually getting your time, and make sure that you're using RaceSense to do that. Thanks everybody for being here. I know for a lot of folks in America, it's the middle of the workday. I know for a lot of folks in Europe, we're probably encroaching into dinner time or your evening. So thanks for coming out and spending 45 or 50 minutes with us to learn a little bit. If you have more questions, I think most of you are in a RaceSense support WhatsApp group, or you have my email. My email is doug@vakaros.com. That's DOUG at vakaros.com. You can also go to support@vakaros.com. We will be here to take care of you and answer any questions. So if more stuff comes up, if you want to learn about repeaters or mounting or whatever it may be, feel free to reach out to us. And in the meantime, best of luck on the water. I know a lot of you have RaceSense events coming up or might even be in the middle of some right now. So we really appreciate that. And we will hopefully see you all on the water soon.